Won't be like planning
Jinxed
board.
us.
We've done that before. Never intentionally.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Greytown Council meeting of October 17th, 2023. As per our usual policy, this meeting is being held both remotely and in person. I will begin with roll call. Councillor Height.
Present. I confused myself.
Councillor Meany.
Present.
Councillor McGuire.
Present.
Councillor Gass.
Present.
And I'm Councillor Chappell, and to my right is interim town manager Josh Tiffany, and also in the room is planning director Doug Webster.
I'm succumbing to peer pressure.
If we could all rise, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First up is the consent agenda, which only includes the minutes from October 3rd, 2023. Did anyone have any edits that they want to remove from the consent agenda? No? Yes?
I
No?
just have a very minor one. I'm not sure if it's worth opening it up for it, though.
Is it just proofreading, kind of?
Yeah, it's like a word substitution. Yeah, it's not that critical.
Okay. Are you comfortable with leaving it in the consent
Yeah.
agenda? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So looking for a motion to approve the consent
So
agenda.
moved.
Second.
Matthew?
Yes.
Marty?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
And I'm also a yes. Okay, next up is public comments of non-agenda items. Comments are intended for information sharing, not discussion. Comments in excess of 3 minutes are welcome at the end of the agenda prior to adjournment. Is there anyone here who has comments for non-agenda items? And I'm not seeing anyone online. So I will close the public comments at 7:13 p.m. Okay, next up are adjustments to the agenda. Does anyone have any proposed adjustments?
I have none.
No.
Okay. Easy enough. Okay, so next up are the public hearings. First, we need a motion to remove from the table the second reading and public hearing for changes to the Zoning Ordinance, Chapter 402, including the addition of a new section for self-storage facility standards and amendment of the Village Center design standards. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll
Second.
second. Oh,
I'll give it to Ann.
Fine.
Marty gets it all the time.
Do you want me to read the motion?
What's up?
Do you want me to read the proposed motion?
Sure, yeah, that would be great.
Ordered the town of Grey Council removes from the, you did that one. No, I guess we have to vote
No,
on that, don't we,
yeah.
now that we did the prior one. Sorry, my mistake. We ordered the Greytown Council removes from the table the second reading and public hearing for amendments to the Zoning Ordinance, Chapter 402, including the addition of a new section for self-storage facility standards and amendment of the Village Center design standards.
Okay. Does anyone have any thoughts or comments on removing this from the table? No, okay. Ann, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Marty?
Yes.
Matthew?
Yes.
And I'm also a yes. Okay, next I'm going to open the public hearing to review proposed changes to the Self Storage Ordinance, Chapter 402, including the addition of a new section for self-storage facility standards and amendment of the Village Center design standards. Is there anyone here who would like to speak to these changes as part of the public hearing? No, and I'm not seeing anyone online. Doug, would you mind just coming up and giving a quick overview? I know we've talked about this in workshop and at the first read, but just for the people watching at home.
Sure, and just point of clarification, I should have picked this up. It's actually not, it's not a self-storage ordinance. It's actually performance standards that are housed in the zoning ordinance, but.
Oh, okay, so we should change
But it
the-
says 402, so I think we're all set.
Okay, do you want me to change the motion, or you?
What should it say instead
Yeah,
of
what-
ordinance?
Changes to the zoning ordinance regarding self-storage standards
Okay.
would
So
probably
ordinance
be
should become
a little bit
standards.
crisper.
Okay.
Self-storage, so, I'm sorry,
Self-storage standards.
standards, okay.
I should have picked that up. It's my mistake.
Okay, thank you.
Nope, it's very minor. So, in response to direction provided by the council, we've had this is I think the third round, if you will, of changes. And the changes are designed to address aesthetics as well as relevant standards associated with self-storage buildings, including climate-controlled, both. It's been a while since I've looked at these. There are maximum footprints for different types. There are general standards. Virtually all, unless you have a situation where you're replacing an existing self-storage structure, which is done by the code officer, all new self-storage facilities need to be reviewed by the planning board. They are allowed as currently drafted, they're allowed in the light manufacturing overlay district, which is the Route 100 North Commercial District, as well as the Route 100 South. It's not the commercial district immediately adjacent to the plaza on Portland Road. It's the one on the south side of Gray Flats. That's the light manufacturing overlay district. In accordance with direction provided by the council, the template is to utilize these standards to be applicable currently for the light manufacturing overlay district, and then reutilize presumably these standards and may be amended as appropriate as an integral part of the new zoning, part of implementing the comprehensive plan. So this is sort of the initial template. As the council's aware, one of the big points of contention was the 300-foot setback for new self-storage structures. The intention of that was to try to preserve the frontage for other commercial uses, with the long-term goal of diversifying the tax base to reduce reliance on the residential tax base.
Thank you, Doug. Does anyone want to add any thoughts or comments as part of the public hearing? No?
Thank you.
I did see someone has joined online. We're still, the public hearing for the self-storage standards is still open if anyone would like to comment. No? Okay. I'm going to close the public hearing at 7:19 p.m. So I'm looking for a motion to review proposed changes to the self-storage standards, Chapter 402, including the addition of a new section for self-storage facility standards and amendment of the village center design standards.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, before we go to vote, does anyone have any comments they'd like to make as part of the voting?
Only to say that we've been at this for a while, so don't take our lack of comments as the fact that there's disinterest here. I mean, there have been some changes, modifications through all the conversation. Clearly there are some people who disagree with the goals of the ordinance. But the long-term plan is to help diversify the tax base, which is something we've been struggling with for literally decades. So this is hopefully a move in the direction of helping us do that.
Thank you for that summary, Dan. Go ahead.
I guess haven't been involved in this process as long as some of the members of the council, and I agree with the goals of the ordinance, but I upon first read I had some concerns, and planning staff was very was responsive to some of my concerns, but I still I just have concerns about this idea we're going to force development 300 feet away from the road, and have deeper development away from the road. That hasn't changed, and I totally acknowledge there's need for revising the way we're dealing with self-storage, but I can't, I just can't support the ordinance, so.
Fair enough. Anyone else have thoughts or comments? I'll just add that, just as we've been working on this ordinance, and I've driven around to different towns in Maine, I have seen examples of self-storage ordinances located back from the road with other types of commercial development in front. Oftentimes, I didn't even know there was self-storage behind those buildings that were on the road frontage, and I've only just been paying attention to it as we've been working on this. On the flip side of that, I've also been noticing a lot of development of self-storage facilities in other towns directly on the roadway, taking up prime real estate for other types of commercial development that generate more income for the town. And frankly, they're also not very attractive. So while I recognize it is pushing development back and potentially clearing lots, I think ultimately, if we want the type of visual appeal for Gray and also the diverse tax base, we need to leave space for it on our road frontage, so that's why I am supporting the ordinance as written.
We did grandfather 2 projects too that were underway
We did.
to the existing standards.
That's
So
right.
they would not be adversely affected by this since they had already started down the road as far as planning was concerned.
And one of those is currently under construction on South Gray on
Yep.
Route 100, if people are wondering what that development is.
And then, well, there's also, I guess, I also have this concern, which I haven't expressed yet, and maybe, maybe Doug can answer it, maybe it's misplaced, but there also looks like if you were going to, like, convert an existing space in your business that wasn't performing well or whatever, and you wanted to convert it to self-storage, just, a small, low-impact thing, that I think if your building is smaller than 10,000 square feet or something like that, I can't remember how that standard works, but it seems like, in that situation, we would be saying you couldn't convert it to self-storage.
Yeah, I think it says here, it's in section 7A under building requirements. It
Page
says-
13, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Doug. Yeah, packet page 13. It says a building for reuse must have a footprint no greater than 10,000 square feet. Is that the part you're referring to?
No greater than 10,000 square feet. So if your building was, I'm sorry.
10,001 square feet. You couldn't do that.
You couldn't
Yeah.
Convert it to,
Right.
but if your building was less than 10,000 square feet, you could convert a portion of it, or how does that?
I'd have to read through this more closely again, but
Yeah.
I don't think it says a portion. I believe you could convert the entire, but Doug, can you speak to that?
So this would be under 7A on council
Well,
package.
I guess the scenario I'm thinking of is,
Okay.
you have a building, you're not using all the space isn't being used to its full capacity. You'd like to have another use for that space and convert it to self-storage, like some portion of your building to self-storage.
I'm trying to understand, is the building in your scenario larger? Is the footprint greater than 10,000 square feet?
Well, let's say it's less than 10,000 square feet.
If it's less than 10,000, then it would be able to utilize subsection 7, as the chair pointed out.
Yeah, and then if your building is larger than 10,000, you couldn't convert any portion of it to self-storage without.
We hadn't contemplated that. I'm not sure. I can only think of one building, the old building materials, just south of the Mayall intersection on 100 North. I think that might be greater than 10,000. We didn't contemplate a building larger than 10,000.
Okay, I'm just curious as to why that What does that have to do with any of the goals of the ordinance or, that cutoff of 10,000 square feet?
I think the objective was that if there were, and that's the only one that comes to mind, but if there were such a building that was larger than 10,000 square feet, in line with the council goal to try to utilize the frontage for higher value commercial use, it felt inconsistent to allow if there were such a building again, a larger building to that much space to go to self-storage. That was the thinking. The square footage, the usable square footage of Pennell, as an example, it just as an example, is right around 10,000. But that includes, the second floor of Old Pennell and so forth.
Go ahead, Dan.
One of the things when we design the ordinances, especially when it comes to structures, is we sort of look at the inventory of what we have existing, so as to try and not sort of paint an existing building, if you will, sort of out of the picture. So it's not a bulletproof scheme, but it is part of the thought process that goes into the ordinance work.
No, I don't want to
Okay.
take up any more time.
All right. Any other comments before we go to vote? No? Okay. Anne?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Marty?
No.
Matthew?
No.
And I'm a yes. That passes 3-2. Okay, next up is second reading and public hearing, but I'll begin with the public hearing portion to review proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance, chapter 402, and the village center proper design standards related to state law 30-A, MRSA Sections 4364 and 4364-A regarding affordable housing projects and housing density. There's nobody in the chambers here from the public. Is there anyone online who would like to speak at the public hearing related to the changes for the zoning ordinance, chapter 402, related to the law that was just stated? I'm not seeing anyone, so I'm going to close the public hearing for that at 7:28 p.m. I'm looking for a motion to approve the proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance, chapter 402, and the village center proper design standards related to state law 30-A MRSA sections 4364 and 4364-A regarding affordable housing projects and housing density.
So moved.
Second.
Sorry.
So I'll just start by saying that when we discussed this at the first read and our workshop prior to that, these are alignments we're making in our zoning ordinance based on state mandates that were part of what was originally LD 2003. We've made some amendments in our ordinances already to support that law for accessory dwelling units. These edits are addressing affordable housing projects and housing density in town. We will be visiting also the open space subdivision portions of our zoning at a later date. But the current edits are addressing, as I said, affordable housing and housing density, particularly in the growth zone, which we've designated as the village center and village center proper. Doug, did you have anything you'd like to add, just some context?
Just two things, if I may. One, that the changes that you have in front of you were largely drafted based on the input that the council had this past June. And secondly, that the town is required to adopt these standards per the state statute.
Mm-hmm. And the deadline for that adoption is, I believe, January 1st of 2024. Is that correct?
For council, for
council
municipalities.
Yes, municipalities
that's
that have a
correct.
council
Yep.
form of government. Yep.
These would be effective, I haven't done the 30 days out, but mid-November.
Anyone have any comments? Go ahead, Dan.
Just a quick one. There's a third shoe to drop, I think, on this one, isn't there? There's one more part to this work.
The residential open space subdivisions,
Right.
yes, yeah, because those were conceived, drafted, adopted under the premise that there would only be one single family per lot for those subdivisions. OAC is currently, as well as Matt's right back there, I'm working on it. We are looking at the different options to try to bring the residential open space subdivision standards in line with the now statutory requirement to allow at least one ADU on a lot that has a single family on it.
The open space subdivision ordinance was created to allow developers who were willing to create open space to give them a credit and allow them to build a house on a smaller than would normally be allowed lot. So obviously the concern is, since we've already shrunk the size of the lot to allow for the open space calculation, what would the impact be on that same smaller size lot for ADU? And I think that those are that's why there's this third piece for us that we have to go through. If we didn't have an open space subdivision ordinance, we wouldn't have to do that. But I think the goal of the open space subdivision ordinance has kind of already proved itself, even though it's, you know, it's imperfect. And I think the open space committee that has some life to it now and some experience, I think is, you know, the rightful sort of owner, if you will, of the topic. So I don't know, it'd be interesting to see what you bring forward for ordinances for this one.
We're in process.
Yeah. Doug, will the Ordinance Advisory Committee be meeting with Open Space to discuss the open space subdivision at a later date, or are you just coordinating between the two committees?
I have, as part of the information that's going to go to OAC, the minutes from the most recent Open Space Committee meeting.
Okay.
I guess where I am on that is, if the OAC can understand and incorporate the input from the Open Space Committee, we may not need to do that.
Okay.
I'm still trying to get my arms around the big pieces of the changes to the subdivision ordinance, and if it is warranted to have a joint meeting, then absolutely we can. I guess I'm
Okay.
waiting to see where we land.
All right, well, we can talk about that at OAC. Does anyone have any, go ahead, Anne.
Yeah, just on that note, the Open Space Committee has been trying to work its way through the list of questions that we came up with, I think back in June or something, and we keep getting derailed by planning for the Blueberry Fest or Community Day or other things, and so I'm just really grateful to the committee members, because when we do focus on it, they're asking very thoughtful questions, and they're really trying to grapple with it starts to feel like 3D chess sometimes when you're kind of trying to imagine and project out into the future the impacts of these changes. And so, long story short, we're not done, and we probably have, 7 or 8 questions left to work our way through. So I actually mean to email Kristen and the chair to just see if we can't maybe even schedule a second meeting to devote specifically to the questions, because it's somewhat time sensitive, and I'm frustrated that we haven't been able to move through it.
Yeah, just to that point regarding our the timeline, I've just heard through my work with GPCOG and other municipalities, we're actually much farther along than a lot of our neighbors. So I just want to commend the planning staff and also Open Space and OAC, because I think we have had a lot of good movement that other towns are struggling to enact. So while this was sort of forced upon us, I think we're doing a good job getting it done.
Thank you.
So, so does anyone have any thoughts related specifically to the affordable housing or density edits in these changes that we're reviewing tonight?
I don't have anything to add.
No.
Okay. So I will go to vote. Anne,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Marty,
Yes.
Matthew,
Yes.
and I'm also a yes. Thank you, Doug.
Closure to
Yeah.
two big items.
Yeah, there you go.
Good job.
Give yourself a round of applause.
Thank you.
Okay, so next up is a public hearing, and then a vote, to review proposed changes to the municipal General Assistance Ordinance, repealing and replacing appendices A through H of the existing ordinance, which shall be in effect from October 1st, 2023 through September 30th, 2024. There are no members of the public in the chambers for the public hearing, and I'm not seeing any hands online. So I will close the public hearing for these general assistance changes at 7:36 p.m. And I'm looking for a motion for the Greytown Council to make the amendments I just noted.
So moved.
Second.
I will just note that this is something we review annually. The amounts we receive
Oh, that's right,
and
yeah.
are noted in our packet tonight are given to us from the state, and we adopt the amounts listed based on their, I suppose it's a mandate.
Yep.
So we don't really have the authority to make changes to the amounts that are in here, but just we are going through the process so that we are in alignment with state standards. Does anyone have comments or questions? Go ahead, Ann.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit confused by these housing maximums on pages 74 and 76. And they just seem awfully low to me. And I did a quick Google, I mean, in a Cumberland County, I think Gray is included in the HMFA, and
Yes.
Yeah.
and so like a one bedroom unheated would be about $1,000 a month, and a 2-bedroom would be about $1,384 a month. And when I just looked at Realtor.com, there aren't that many rental properties available in Gray, so let's just
No.
say that. But it listed, Realtor.com listed 2 bedrooms as renting at around $2,000 a month, and then Trulio had a 1-bedroom on Mail for $2,000 a month essentially, and 4-bedroom on Ramsdale for around $2,000. So, I mean, there's obviously it depends on the location of the property and its quality and that kind of thing, but. I really think we need to bump these up.
We're actually on the Portland HMFA,
Oh,
not the Cumberland
okay.
County. We're the northern point of it. I was
Oh,
just
right,
checking
okay,
that out.
yeah,
New
thank you,
Gloucester's Cumberland County, we're at the last part of
Oh,
Portland.
okay, yeah, right, okay, so
Yeah,
that
so
would be
that
on
would-
page 75?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
so just to use the 1-bedroom example, 1-bedroom unheated monthly would be $1,405, heated would be $1,576. I agree that those are probably still low, but I don't believe we have the authority to change the figures that we receive.
Well, I mean, if you look at the text of what's in the packet here, it does say, like, all municipalities should not adopt these suggested housing maximums.
Oh, you're right.
Only consider adopting the following numbers. If not, a market survey should be conducted and the figures altered accordingly. So,
We'd
I
have
mean,
to
I read
first-
that to
yeah.
say we do have the authority to adjust those.
Yeah,
I think-
you're right, I missed that,
I-
yeah, but it
I
does say
think
that.
for me, the key is its assistance.
Right, it's not covering the whole
That
thing.
It's, yeah, I don't think the goal of the program was necessarily to cover the entire
Right.
rent, but it's to provide meaningful assistance for people to help them out.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, that's my understanding too. I just want to,
Yeah, I had missed that,
Yeah.
but and you're right, it does say that. But it sounds like we would need to do a market survey and then submit those findings to DHHS, which I'm not
oh, it's
sure.
got to be submitted to them?
I'm
Yeah,
not sure
it
we
does,
have
yeah.
capacity to do that right now.
Right.
Right,
I
and,
can only imagine MDOT is enough of a lift for us as it is.
but to Dan's point, I mean, this is a maximum to help somebody with their rent. It's not, the
Right.
intent is not to cover
And
them.
$1,500-ish for a 1-bedroom is a significant portion of your.
Yeah, it's in the ballpark, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I stand corrected, and we should move on.
I don't think it's a matter of correction, it's just that there's so many darn rules.
Yeah.
No one brain can hold them all.
Right.
Mine certainly can,
Yeah, that's why it's a team, that's why council is a team sport.
yeah.
Oh, I will note, just since we're talking about general assistance, one of GPCOG's legislative priorities this year, we just adopted at our executive committee meeting today, is to advocate on behalf of some bills that are up for the second session of the legislature beginning in January, which will amend the way the state, if they're passed, would amend the way the state deals with general assistance in municipalities. So we could see some changes in the next year or two related to how these figures are determined and also how they're implemented and distributed. So just to keep that on your radar. Yeah, I think that there's been a lot of talk at the state level about better coordinating with municipalities, how general assistance is implemented, especially given the pressures of all the housing crisis and a lot of immigration happening that needs to that is solely being supported through general assistance at the town level. So I don't know what will become of that, but just as a point of note. Okay, so I'm gonna go to a vote. Matthew?
Yes.
Marty?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
I'm also a yes. Okay, next up is report from the council chair. Couple things. Just want to remind people that next Tuesday, the 24th, we'll be holding a public meeting with Don Garish of Eaton Peabody to get feedback from residents and businesses, anyone who'd like to participate regarding what we would like to see in our next town manager. It's open to the public. It begins at 6:00 p.m. and it will be hosted here in council chambers in addition to being viewable online and over Zoom.
I was just gonna, and Mr. Garish will be running the meeting.
Yes, Don Garish will be running the meeting. It's not council-led. Also, the joint leaders meeting was scheduled for today, but I had a conflict with GPCOG executive committee, so I was unable to attend, but I will certainly report back anything I hear about that. Just trying to think. I failed to make notes because I was gone all day, but Josh, do we have anything pressing that I'm not thinking of? I'm trying to, I had stuff in my head and then I didn't write it down.
Do we have a workshop next Tuesday?
That's the public meeting.
Oh,
that was
okay.
mentioned, October 24th. Oh, that was right. Tomorrow, GPCOG is hosting a convening here in Gray at the library from 6 to 7. So, Dan, are you still planning to attend that? And Josh will be there and I will be
Yes.
there. So that is a regional convening. They're hosting kind of sub-regional convenings to better collaborate with the more rural communities in their member service area. They have hosted a Lakes Region subcommittee meeting once, and I think there's another one they're hosting next week after ours. And we will be participating with Durham, Gloucester, North Yarmouth, the county government, and I feel like there was one other that I'm not remembering. Cumberland, maybe?
I think it was.
Yeah, I think it was Cumberland. So that should be a good conversation. It's just an opportunity to identify some regional priorities, but also just to develop relationships with our neighboring towns, which could be useful potentially. One other thing I wanted to note that was not, which I'll report out on my executive committee work later on, but I did have conversations today with Nat, what's his last name, Tupper from Yarmouth. He's a town manager from North Yarmouth. He let me know that he has put in his notice that he's retiring as of January, and also I heard that the gentleman who is the town manager of Cumberland is also retiring this spring. So I just wanted to put that on people's radar that we are in some competition for potential job openings. And then another thing that was mentioned to me, I was talking with Nat Tupper from Yarmouth, and I was talking about how we were looking to get some space on the state police radio tower, and we were running up against some pushback on that. And he noted that I think Bill Shane of Cumberland is looking to put in a tower in Cumberland, so he suggested we might want to look into coordinating or potentially getting in on whatever they're doing. So I don't know, Josh, if what kind of progress Chief has made with the state police on the tower and adding our radio equipment to that.
I'll check into that.
But he might want to reach out to the Cumberland folks, just to see what they're up to.
It doesn't hurt. I mean, the location of the tower will determine what's covered, so.
Right, that's what I was saying. I wasn't sure if it was located in Cumberland, if it would reach really the area we
Yeah.
needed to address, which was north on the I-95. So it potentially wouldn't, but it's an opportunity for another option.
Always worth checking.
Of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, I think that's all I have for the chair report. So, Josh, I think you're up.
All right. First what I'd like to do is draw the council's attention to packet page 81. This was an idea by our, not digital media coordinator, communications and IT interim director. This is an effort to just kind of, rather than have anyone who's interested in town council happenings have to plow through the agendas or look through the meeting recordings, just to present a nice graphic at the end of the meeting that could be shown online, as well as broadcast, just with kind of some quick points as to what was accomplished, what was done during that meeting, and give an announcement towards the next meeting. Just a nice little easy digestible tidbit. And again, I think things like the goals that reestablishment that we did for the workshop would be warranted on here. And it was just kind of an open way to just get people more in line with what we are doing without having to invest time or give them a doorway to walk through if they're interested. And if anyone thinks it's a horrible idea, please let me know now. and
I
we'll pull the plug on it.
I was really pleased to see this in here. I think a lot of times I feel like we operate in a bit of a black box, not just for the residents don't always have the time to tune in, but also staff. So
Right.
I think this is a good way to get that information out there.
Yeah, indexing videos is definitely
Yeah.
help.
Yeah.
And then also just giving the people to hear what was included in that video if you want to take a look and to be able to go through.
Go ahead.
Say that last part again.
Indexing the video is great, so you have the
Oh.
agenda where you click on it, but I think this will help people, just your average citizen, be like, wow, I didn't realize this was up last night, I wonder what that discussion went like.
And are there, so is the idea, I see some of the text is different colored, is the idea that there'd be like links embedded in this, or?
And we're working on that part right now.
Okay.
It was both as a GCTV logo and then a Facebook, which doesn't really allow links, but then it could also be hypertext out and put on the website as well. So it's still very much, we are playing with the overall idea and best delivery for it as to how much access we want to have on it, or whether it's just going to be a quick little bumper sticker of, here's what your town council did last night.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's a great idea to, foster communication with what's going on and what we're doing. And yeah, if it's not too much of a technical challenge, at least where it appears on the website, I think it would be good if, like, oh, this happened, I'm interested in that, and click.
Bang, yep.
And,
We'll see.
you can just go to the,
Right, that
the
section or
council
that, yep.
package or whatever it is.
We can certainly look into that.
Yeah. Understood.
So Kyle, very good idea, thank you.
Yes.
The other thing is I realized is that after the conclusion of tonight's meeting, we have 3 meetings left on the calendar in this calendar year, one of which I am not here for.
Right.
So I'm hoping to at least get a budget deadline for the staff to turn them into town manager to get the process rolling. I know we're still very early and haven't really had any deadlines, and definitely had some conversations about wanting to get on it, so.
Those were typically done in December for
Okay.
department heads to submit their
Okay.
budget requests to the town manager. I would like to try to maintain that
Okay.
schedule this year. I know that you're hoping to not manage the budget process,
I
but
definitely want to manage at least the front,
yeah,
I know
just
the front end is certainly on it. Okay.
because last year we didn't get that underway really until January,
Right,
and
and
it really
then that
caused
was-
a bottleneck at the
Right.
end of our budget process. Go ahead, Dan.
At our retreat, we talked about changes to the
Yes,
process.
we did. Yeah.
And that might facilitate different dates if we adopt a process similar to that.
I'm just going back to what I wrote down here.
We talked about some goal setting before the department heads begin doing any work, because yeah, I think the way the conversation went was, bringing us a 27% increase just isn't a good use of people's time, because that's not gonna happen. I think the council setting an expectation for what the general increase, if there's to be one, is, will help them make much better use of their time. I think it's important that whatever they present to for the budget, have an appendix of all of the things they think they need or would be of value for the town to need that they may not include in that budget, so we know, looking out, what future need might be. But I'd like to see us make some significant changes to the budget process. Personally, I think there's a lot of room for improvement, and I think it would be easier on everybody if we streamlined it.
We had also talked at the retreat about scheduling a workshop with Justine for any finance changes or parts of the budgeting process that she would recommend that we change. So I would like to follow up with that also. But Dan, you're right, we were going to have some changes to the timeline. I still think, I mean, we have set goals, and I will type them up, and I need to type them up. And then we've identified some other priorities tonight. So I think that those can inform staff, at least at the start. And if they come to us, I remember we talked about at the retreat also about kind of separating requests into 3 different buckets, and like, you know, the first bucket being, this is what I absolutely need to keep the lights on, and then the additional stuff, and then the nice to haves. So I think if we could just, you know, give the department heads that as a framework.
Yep. Excellent. I've been talking about that in the last couple of department head meetings, and they very much seem to like the idea. And they very like the idea of the ability for council then to scale the request. If we hold a public meeting and everyone's like, do not raise my taxes at all, then you
Right.
kind of have the, let's go back down to skinny, and this is what we got. So, but also it does identify the parts where like, this thing is probably going to crash this year, so we definitely need to get that in line. And if not this year, then we know that's an issue for next year. And then also, I always like to have a list of pie in the sky, you know, as I say, they suddenly find an oil well sitting in the back of Pennell Field, we're gonna have $1 billion. So if we
Right.
have that, what do we wanna do?
Right, and regarding public input, what we had outlined at our retreat was to have some public input at a regular council meeting regarding policy, our goals that we've outlined for the year. And then again, after department heads make recommendations, and then at the end, as part of our statutory requirement, to hold a public hearing. That was the 3 inputs we had for the public. Is that what you recall, Dan?
Yeah, I think we talked about having the department heads present their budgets all in one day on Saturday.
Yes, yeah.
Having a morning session and an afternoon session so that we could, you know, not tie people up for the entire day, but get through all of the budget, all of the department head reports in one go.
I think we said 2 days, but yeah, but we can try for 1 and we'll see how it works.
And the staff was also very amenable to that, because that had gotten through, and a lot of people
Okay.
had known that idea, and definitely were more appreciative of that effort to just get it all in at once. And
That's good feedback.
And the schools managed to do it in a day. They have a
Yeah.
bigger budget than we do. I think we could probably do the same thing,
Mhm.
especially if people are prepared in the, you know, the third, sort of three buckets, if you will.
yep.
Okay, sorry, we kind of derailed your
No, this is
updates.
exactly what I asked for. So. No, I appreciate that very much, and that will certainly get that deadline to the staff, and then that should be kind of the culminating, or the starting point of where we march on from there. So I have been working on the communications to our town committee members. My expectation is by the end of this week, at the very least, we will have the website cleaned up and our database cleaned up, and also have notified everyone who has expired, thanking them for their service this year, as well as welcoming new people with a form letter saying, thank you so much for volunteering your time. I have a process that I've been working on, but it is still very much, as you'll see, getting worked around. Every time I think I have it nailed down, there's always another angle that I just want to get covered, because I really want to make a 1-page sheet of paper that will pass down through time. And it will now, every time May 1 rolls around, everyone will be getting there, hey, you're expiring this year, do you want to re-up?
Yeah.
July 1 rolls around, are you sure you don't want to re-up? You still have time to do it. And then September 1, thank you so much for your service to the town. And then when people get on, we'll actually have some more information. So it's a lot more work than I thought it would be, but I think this is also a wonderful step forward into how we want to treat and maintain our volunteers.
Yeah, I think that's really great to have that process in place, because I think there's definitely been some communication breakthroughs in regards to expirations of terms for committee members. So.
Yeah, sadly, I think that there was a lot of institutional knowledge that walked out the door through some of
Yeah.
the staff turnovers in the last couple of years, so really we're looking forward to getting that set up again. I reiterated to staff that we are reinforcing the council deadlines for packets and what could be included as well as when to get the agendas on there. And that is definitely done in deference to the fact of you should have a complete packet without 500 pages being added on or last minute additions appearing in the last 24 hours. So it was outlined already on the website on whatever link I used for packet page 82 in the email that was on there that had the agenda schedule revised. That was pretty much, I think, with 13 days out for agenda items on there and then 1 week out for packet materials. So on a case-by-case basis, under dire emergencies, we can always reassess, but I think this will hopefully lead to staff being better able to manage their own time to get stuff before council in a regular fashion and to have council be given as much information as soon as possible and also make the stuff publicly accessible without it feeling like we're pressing the last minute or trying to not show what we're talking about.
That'd be great.
Yeah, thank you.
And the last one, two last things, is just a reminder that panel will be closed on Friday, November 10th for Veterans Day, and the Gray Public Library and Transfer Station will be closed on Saturday the 11th. And also wish everyone a very happy Halloween, as we'll not be seeing each other again until then. And I always write down a staff thanks, and this one I really just, as time in my town manager position has really taught me that there is a ton of silent work that goes on that is invisible to almost everyone in this town, but is absolutely crucial and essential to what we do. So for everyone from the transfer station to the town clerk to the buildings and grounds to the public works to everyone who makes great work in a way that makes people not have to notice that it's working, I just want to say thank you very much. You're doing a great job, and I'm really proud to be sitting in this seat for a second.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you.
Just one quick question.
Oh, shoot, please.
What is MEIAAO?
Yeah, what is that? I hate those acronyms.
Wait, on what packet page?
Um,
Oh, packet page 83.
Yeah,
That is from the assessor. I don't
Don't you hate
I don't
those
know what
acronyms?
Maine, probably, I'm guessing Maine,
Maine.
something
right.
assessors,
Yeah.
something around,
Okay.
I don't know. That's a good
Something to
question.
do with
I
money.
will also make a recommendation to staff to please include, if they're using acronyms, at least have one breakdown of what the acronym is
That's
for our
a good idea.
benefit. That one I will try for, we'll see what happens.
at least it proves I read it.
When I first heard GP Cog, I said, yeah, what's that?
I should say what it is every time I say it.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and thank you to all the department heads who submitted their updates. That's always good reading material, keeps us informed. Okay, next up, committee reports. I'll begin with Matthew.
All I have is a mea culpa, and that I missed the Dry Mill School meeting last night. And that's the only committee meeting that I should have been at since the last meeting.
Okay, thank you. Marty?
The Zoning Board of Appeals will meet October 25th at 7 p.m. Wild Blueberry Festival will have their presentation for the end of the year at our next meeting, November 14th. They're having a Zoom meeting for planning the 8th festival, October 25th at 6 p.m. Finance Committee will meet this Thursday at 4 p.m., the 19th. And Planning Committee met last night and had presentations from 5 pieces of property, and Area Estates is having a site walk to be determined. And that's all I've got.
Thank you, Marty. Dan?
Yes, planning board met last night. And it was quite a long night. It got out a little after 10, actually. One of the things that came up was the Stillwater Pines, the CZA, with a request. There were 2 issues there. One, part of when the council created the CZA, phase 1 required that the town have access to the land that was going to be given to the town. We included that in the CZA because we wanted to make sure that if phase 2 was never built, that we would still be able to use that property. We created kind of an impossible situation though, because in order to provide us access for phase 1, in order to provide us access for that, phase two would have to be approved, because that's, the road is built to that land in phase two. So I think, lesson learned on the council side, when we do the CZAs, we have to be careful as far as sharpening our pencil, because we sort of created a situation that the developer can't meet. In the end, they have until July of this year to turn that property over to us, so it looks like it's all gonna work within the confines of that anyways. The other one was that in the CZA, we changed the dimensions of Woodcock Drive. In this second phase, the developer had asked the planning board for the ability to build a wider road, because he had heard complaints from the existing neighbors that the road is too tight. Especially in winter, there was some concerns. I pointed out and there's been several meetings, but I pointed out again last night that the intent of the council was to maintain that 18-foot width. That some of the advantages of that are the slowing of traffic, which is important in the neighborhood, the reduced impervious surface, the reduced runoff. The developer sort of withdrew the request to enlarge the road and go with the existing CZA agreement. I pointed out that all the people that were, the developer wasn't gonna go back and widen the existing piece, so all of the people that said that they wished that it was wider wouldn't reap any benefit from the change. Doug wants to, look like you want to add something to that?
July of '24.
Oh, July of '24, thank you.
Right, yeah.
July of '24, thanks for correcting me on that. So that was the big change there. Open Space has met with, I believe, one of the developers for subdivision. Talked a little bit last night about planning board using Open Space Committee as a resource, which I think they hadn't really thought of, but we're actually quite keen about. They've pointed another another engineer your way for another development.
Yeah.
This one up on Eagle Nest. The interesting thing there is that it's not the Eagle's Nest development, it's a new subdivision. But the open space that they presented last night doesn't abut the open space of the existing subdivision. So there was some conversation about, what changes could be made to that. So it'd be interesting. And then the developer's engineer was very keen on, meeting with open space and getting their input. So I thought that those were both really good developments. Brownfields will meet tomorrow at noon. Kristen, our town planner, is the point person for Brownfields now, so that will be good to just sort of get back into the swing of things there and sort of get them going again.
Sorry, Dan, are you, I assume you are because you're talking about, are you the council designee for Brownfields? I don't recall who was on the committee originally.
Yes.
Okay.
To be honest with you, originally, when the committee was created, Nate wasn't gonna have anybody from the council.
That's what I was recalling. So, but I know we're in transition now, so I
Yeah.
perhaps we discussed that at one point, and I just have forgotten.
So I've been attending just kind of as a liaison.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Well, thank you for taking that on.
Let's see, there was one other thing. Oh, we talked a little bit about financial reports. I had sent an email to Justine today. I've been working on the warrants, which we talked about before. I've done accounts payable and I've done payroll. I think I've got a pretty clean process I've worked through with Justine for how to do the accounts payable warrants. That I think is the easier of the two. We're going to talk about it, she wants to talk about it in finance. We may actually go through a packet of warrants I did. They're generating a lot of questions, which isn't really what you want to have happen. So Justine is still trying to work her way into what the best process is. So I don't think it's ready yet to sort of roll out to everybody. But the goal is to get to a point where we're all in a rotation, we're all able to do that.
Yeah, thanks for updating on this. I was wondering about that.
Yeah, so financial reports, I sent her an email today, and I copied, I think, Krista and Josh. And Nate had created, when we had the issue with our financial reports and the audit and all that, he created a pretty robust plan. And so I think that since we have a new finance manager, it makes sense for her.
Yeah, thank you I did read that this morning. It was good to resurrect those documents, because in all the transition, I don't think we have implemented a lot of the checks and balances that are outlined there, so I think forwarding that along was.
I have, let's see, I think that's it for me for tonight. Thank you.
Yep. Ann?
I also want to acknowledge the monthly reports from town staff. Anyone who wonders what our staff are up to should take a look at the packet tonight. And they're quite busy and they're very productive. And we didn't discuss it in the council, but I just wanted to let the staff know that we did read them.
Yeah.
And really appreciate their work.
Yeah.
Open Space met. We did meet with the developers from Teradyne regarding a proposed subdivision on Blackthorn Road, which is interesting because there's a potential for open space and trail corridor connectivity. We looked at their lot and where they were proposing to site stuff, and showed them the connections that we were interested in to other trails and to the pipeline corridor there. I think we are interested, the open space is interested in meeting with planning board and getting involved at an earlier point in the process, so that rather than waiting until later on when the developer has already expended a lot of time and treasure and sort of doing the sites planning, just having a conversation early on with us informally to say, hey, there's this trail connectivity and stuff that you should be considering when you think about the open space. And I think that's a role open space sees itself playing and is happy to do. And we also discussed in the meeting some of those key questions, the open space subdivision ordinance, and like I said, we're kind of working our way through those. CEDC has no quorum, has not met. I spoke with the current chair who's sort of reconsidering her future with the CEDC and interested in perhaps moving to a different committee. She hasn't made that decision yet. Resiliency will meet on Monday at 5 via Zoom, so I'm excited about that.
That's great. So for me, OAC is scheduled to meet on Thursday at 4:30, where we'll pick back up the open space subdivision work. And GP-COG met this afternoon. I mentioned earlier that we adopted some legislative priorities for advocacy work based for the region. They were around general assistance, housing, particularly transitional housing and support from the state around that. And what was the third one? I can't recall the third one off the top of my head, but it had full support from the executive committee, all three of the priorities. We also had a presentation by Rick Harbison, who's leading the Vision Zero work that Ann's joining the advisory board on. That work so basically it was done in two parts. So the PACS communities, the communities that are part of PACS, and forgive me, I don't recall exactly what that acronym stands
Portland
for.
Area Comprehensive Transportation System.
Oh, okay, thank you. So those are basically the kind of greater Portland communities, much closer to Portland, who are part of that. They sought funding through the federal government that was part of the infrastructure funding the federal government had about a year ago, to develop an action plan to reduce fatalities on roadways. They actually went ahead and completed the Vision Zero action plan without that funding for the PACS communities. So and then ultimately GP-COG was approved for that planning work. And so now they're using the funds they would have received for PACS to work with the rural and island communities in their membership map to develop a similar action plan that's more specific to the needs of those communities. So Gray is participating, New Gloucester, Durham, I can't recall the map, but anyway, it's all the kind of surrounding towns near us, except I will note Raymond and Standish are part of PAX, which I don't know why Raymond's part of PAX.
302.
Oh, okay, that does make sense. Anyway, so that work is beginning now and is aiming to be done. They are hoping to have the action plan vetted by April of 2024 and then approved by the executive committee. So why this is important for us is once the region has an action plan, or the region being these rural communities they've identified, we will be, they'll develop some priority areas that are most at risk for fatalities. I'm assuming Gray will be one of those priorities. I don't know for that for sure, but our roadways are very unsafe in their current state. Once the action plan is adopted and their priorities are identified, we will be eligible for, as a region, accessing implementation grants to address these priority roadways. And honestly, the timing for this couldn't really be better for the work we're already doing, and I'm really hoping that Gray is identified at least somewhat as a priority area. My understanding when I was asking questions about it today is that they may try to identify priority areas that abut kind of the towns that we're partnering with, so New Gloucester or Durham. I mean, we touch North Yarmouth, we touch other towns, and so it's possible it wouldn't necessarily be in the village, but there are certainly lots of roads in Gray that would need safer roadways potentially. One question I did have is that there's separate buckets of money. So there's this implementation money for the priority areas, but there's also planning and demonstration project money. One question I asked today was, before this action plan is approved for our region, whether or not we would have access to the demonstration money, and they're gonna look into that because part of that would be setting up temporary bollards or crosswalks, things we talked about doing in the village, so.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, so.
Test the design. Yep.
Yeah.
Right, so if we could access some of those funds early, especially as we're doing our own planning work, I think that would be really great. They're gonna get back to me about that. And then, the rest of it, we were supposed to work on, GPCOG strategic planning work that they're doing for 2030, through 2030, but the fire alarm went off, so we didn't get to conclude that, so I'm hoping we'll pick that back up next time. That's all I have for committee reports, and so we'll move on to correspondence and activities. Matthew, do you want to start us off?
I don't have anything to report
Okay.
since last
Marty?
week.
Last Wednesday, I went to lunch at First Congregational Church in New Gloucester, and it was very good. There was a good turnout, and the food was great.
Great. That's great.
Dan?
Dan?
Yeah, I actually had a bunch. I received a text and an invitation from Brandon Pollard to discuss his sort of medical cannabis business, which I'm gonna follow up on. I sent an email to Paul Johnson at GPCOG to get access to the short-term rental database.
You mentioned that today.
Yeah, which I shared with everybody. We have an ordinance, but it's one of those things where, the road to nowhere is paved with good intentions. I mean, we wanted to do something to get a sense of what the problem is, but I think it could be pretty work intensive too, to follow through on that. So I think at some point in time, we might want to discuss that, because this particular resource didn't exist when we created the ordinance.
So that was raised right at the end of our last session. Paul came in to give a presentation of the new software GPCOG had developed, and we did need to loop back around as to whether we were gonna just shift to using that software or continue with this paper registration that we have as part of our ordinance, so.
Do you know what the cost is of that? Because I know we didn't budget for it in this year.
So this year, they're offering it to towns free of charge
Yeah.
as a kind of test year. Going forward, they will be charging, I believe it was 25% of the market rate of similar software. So It's thousands and thousands of dollars to
Yeah.
use software that tracks short-term rentals that other communities are currently using. I think Falmouth is one of them. So they were, I believe, gonna be charging 25% of what they determine is the market rate for those services.
Is the free period, is that a calendar year or the fiscal year, do you know?
I think it was the fiscal year.
Okay, so so we could.
We're a portion of the way through that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, all right, so that was interesting.
Yeah.
I did exchange emails with Gerald Fawcett, who's the president of Deer Acres, and when I have some more information there, I'll share it with everybody. I did send an email to everybody with suggested changes for the ordinance titles and the way the ordinance webpage is organized. And I did send another email to everybody to talk about residential construction, commercial zones. And I think that's the extent of my correspondence.
That was a huge lift on the ordinance stuff. I haven't commented on it, or I didn't respond to you, your email, but wow, what a lot of work.
Yeah, Ann. Yeah, Ann, did you have any?
Yeah, Krista and I met with Maine DOT, and Doug was there as well, and Josh, regarding the village transformation project. We discussed that at length in the workshop earlier this evening, and you can watch that. Just generally, things are proceeding on that, and we felt it was a positive meeting. I helped town staff coordinate with MDOT regarding a public meeting for the Route 100 North rehab and reconstruction project. That's scheduled for Monday, November 13th from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. The meeting will be on Zoom, but the town will have the library, yes, available, the room downstairs, right? So if you don't want to watch it alone, or don't want to, don't have the capacity to watch it at home, go to the library and you can watch it. And the residents and businesses along Route 100, MDOT will be sending out a notice regarding this meeting with a link to the Zoom. And we'll have that info up on the town website as well once we get it. And let's see, I received a communication from Bill Chapman regarding a right-of-way issue, which I have not responded to. I'm not sure of the status of that. I asked, Josh mentioned this earlier, I asked Chief Alkenich for the history of collisions in Gray Village, and I'll send you guys the link, but it's mdotapps.maine.gov/Maine Crash Public. So it's actually really kind of in a grisly kind of way, it's kind of a nifty app there.
Would you be willing to share that as part of your Vision Zero advisory work? I don't know.
Sure, yeah, absolutely, yeah. That the Vision Zero Advisory Committee meets first on Halloween, and I think that'll be a Zoom meeting. The new segment of the Village Area Loop Trail should be completed this week, I believe. I'm meeting tomorrow with Kristen and with Anthony Doms and Mary Sweeney Underwood to plan a ribbon cutting, so that's pretty excited.
That's exciting.
Good.
Be great. I worked with Kyle on identifying the residents on the west side of Little Sebago who aren't served when we send mail via every door direct mail. And that's been a problem in the past. Those residents do not get town mailings when we do it that way, and it's important to include them. So he's working on that. I had a complaint from a resident regarding the proliferation of bike trails on Libby Hill. Not all of the bike trails are on town-owned land. Some are on private, some are on Great Community Endowment land. I encourage her to reach out to Carl Holmquist, and she has. I understand that Libby Hill has become quite the mountain bike mecca, and because of the trails up there, it's got outstanding trails. And almost all of that work has been done by volunteers, if not all. I had a complaint from a village resident regarding the walk signals at the intersections in the village. The issue is that the walk signals don't stop traffic. They're not designed to. I mean, so instead, after a few seconds, they begin flashing, and motorists sort of interpret that. Motorists aren't stopped, so they think that they have the right of way and they can mow down, pedestrians. Well, not quite, but certainly this particular person has been yelled at multiple times by angry motorists who think that she's in the wrong when she's actually in the right to be in the crossing with the flashing crosswalk signal. So I did check into this and learned that the traffic signals are old and can't be reprogrammed. I mean, they're designed to be triggered by these pressure sensors that are buried under the pavement, and so they sense when a car is near, but they don't, you can't program them to say, you know, be one way during rush hour and another way during the rest of the day. So ultimately, when we reconstruct those intersections, the MDOT has told us that they'll put in sort of smart signal lights that will be able to be programmable. But in the meantime, I wonder if we should look into adding signage that just warns or advises drivers that state law requires them to yield to pedestrians in the crosswalk. I mean, I don't know where we would put them, but that just might be on the tickle list for the budget going forward, because it is a huge safety issue, especially for people who can't make it across the intersections quickly.
Yeah, just as another note regarding signs, I've also seen feedback on some community boards online that people would really like to see some flashing school signs on Short Shaker during school hours. I don't know if that's a budget item we could raise also. Go ahead, Dan.
Just, I have had a couple of conversations with Tim Estes. We put up the signs for Short Shaker when we did the weight restriction. Yeah. And one of the things that came up in conversation was, how do you call attention to those? There are some temporary lighting units that you can attach to existing signs that are solar powered. So rather than buying a sign that blinks forever, which if it doesn't drive other people mad, would drive me mad, and then becomes background too because it's there all the time. These can be moved around from sign to sign, so which I think is much more effective as far as calling people's attention to it, because it's something new.
Yeah.
And when you have a temporary system change or a traffic change like we do with the weight restriction, it would be really useful there. We did have the the Cumberland County Sheriffs did deploy one of their electronic signs at the end of Short Shaker where it meets the bypass, and that was helpful because it's really easy actually to miss those signs if you're not looking for them when you're making that turn. So I'm sorry,
Yeah, I'm done, so that's good.
Mm-hmm.
I would also, on the pedestrian issue, I've seen, I think in like Route 1 in Saco and other places, they actually put a little temporary bollard, that's yellow in the middle of the road, in the middle of the crosswalk,
Yarmouth does that frequently too.
Yeah, just
that's a good idea.
It seemed like it would be a pretty low cost way of, it'd probably be pretty sacrificial too.
Yeah, be prepared for it to be target practice.
Well,
for
it does. It does visually. It also narrows the roadway.
Yeah.
So you do tend to go slower because you're worried about hitting the thing in the middle of the road.
if you're not aiming for it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But yeah, I just sort of see red when somebody in a car yelling at a pedestrian in a crosswalk as being in the wrong. That makes me
Well, you're
crazy.
supposed to yield regardless of the signals. Yeah.
What I get a kick out of is the people that will look you right in the eye and step out in front of you. I know they have the right of way, but they'll step right out in front of you.
That's more of a
Especially
Boston.
in
That's
the
more
dark,
of a Boston problem.
Especially in the dark when they're wearing a
Sister
dark
in your
jacket.
Pet peeve hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I like the bicyclists in dark clothing going the wrong way.
Yeah,
I saw one of those the other night.
Also, don't stop at stop
If you hit
signs.
them- if you hit them
Therapy would
careful.
help with all of
I
this.
know. Okay, I'm gonna move on to my correspondence and activities. So I had also, as Ann mentioned, I was participated in the meeting about the RAISE grant with the MDOT and our state legislators and staff yesterday, and we talked about in the workshop. It was a really fruitful discussion. I also had lunch last week with Sandy Carter, and while it began as a social thing, we did touch on a lot of historical town business, so I just want to note that. I also had some feedback from Doug, actually, just noting that the planning board is kind of at a critical point, and while we do have a quorum, there's 3 members currently, if anyone is absent, it causes a need to cancel the meeting. And that's not just a scheduling issue, it's also a cost to the town because we have to renotice public hearings. And there's also a cost to the people in attendance often who hire consultants and such that are spending time that they then have to pay for here for a meeting that didn't occur. So I don't really have a solution immediately, but I wanted to raise it. I don't know if any of us could potentially do some outreach to recruit some people, particularly for our boards that have judicial authority in town, so the planning board and the zoning board of appeals, and I think there's one other, but that one doesn't meet very frequently, the board of
No,
assessment.
it does have something coming up, though.
Yeah, okay.
Just on that note,
Yeah.
the planner, we're fortunate, not all planning boards have a town planner. We have an excellent town planner.
Yeah.
And Kristen does an amazing job of preparing for the planning board meetings. The memo for last night's meeting was 27 pages long. And she presents all of the town engineer's questions, the staff's questions and concerns, the issues that before the planning board. There's a tremendous responsibility on the planning board granted, and it's a huge technical lift, but there is also a significant amount of support. So for anybody who just is almost kind of afraid to take the plunge because they don't feel like they know anything about planning, we all started there, and there's plenty of supports in place to help someone who's got the interest to get up to speed.
Mhm.
I thought I had somebody talked into it, so.
Oh,
I'll check
okay.
with him.
Well, there we go. Anyway, so yeah, just keep people in mind as you're going about your day. I also had some of the same emails that Ann mentioned, and I also had an email from Deborah Smith. All of these emails are actually in relation to code enforcement issues, and I think we will be addressing some of them in executive committee session on November 14th, because Tammy has raised the need to have those conversations, so keep that on your radar. Josh, I did also want to ask about the mailings that you and Kyle had referenced. Are we pursuing, we were talking about doing a mailing for the community news survey and potentially to notify people of the public meeting coming up on Tuesday.
Currently watching Kyle pull out the microphone.
Oh, okay.
So the voice,
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
louder,
yeah.
louder.
Howdy. Okay.
Good.
So yes, I do have an update on that. We are proceeding with the mailings. The getting mailings to the Gray residents is easy, as you might expect. I'm printing out 200 extra of these postcards, and I will bring them to these roads that are not hit by
Oh.
mailings myself.
Oh, okay.
That is a good solution for now, but we are exploring how to encompass these other people into our general mailing list. But yes, so people will start seeing a postcard that gives information about the community news survey and the upcoming public meeting.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. And then I also had a letter in the mail from Yarmouth Lumber inquiring about a waiver for our weight limit ordinance for trucks on Short Shaker, because they are having a difficult time making a sharp turn south on Route 100, coming off 26 from the direction of the turnpike. And I think some of us have also had communications about that. And so we need to, I think we need to establish we have in the ordinance a way for people to appeal, which is essentially what they're doing, but we really do, I think sooner rather than later, need to establish a process for
Or
that.
to get a permit.
Or to get a permit,
Yeah, not appeal so
Sorry,
much as to
yeah,
get-
it was
yeah,
a
it's to get
permit to do that, yeah.
Yep.
So Josh, I'll follow up with you about that. And then one thing I neglected to mention as part of my chair report was that we have a request from planning to have a workshop in early November to discuss the amendments to the open space subdivision. And we haven't designated any extra workshop time in November, so I just wanted to touch base on that with people to get some dates. I think I'd like to have one in early November, as I'm mentioning, for the purposes Doug needs. And because if we wait until the 14th of November, which is when our regular meeting is, I think that will be too late. And then I just would like to designate one other day, which might be tricky with the Thanksgiving holiday. So the first week of November, I could do Wednesday or Thursday, and then the following week, the 7th and 8th, I would be open to those. I don't know what folks have for time on those days.
7th is election day.
I could do Wednesday the
that's right.
1st.
Wednesday the 1st?
Okay with me?
Sure. What time?
I
5,
could do,
6?
I think 6 is probably better for you, Matthew, is it right? Yeah.
I probably won't, I'll be on the road.
Okay.
I might be, I'll try to participate via Zoom,
Okay.
but I'll be traveling then.
What
Is
would
this a
we- could we-
workshop?
It's a workshop, yeah.
Could we choose a better day
Yeah,
that works
I
for me?
mean-
I'm gonna be gone for like 2 weeks,
Oh, okay.
so me and my significant other in our little camper. so-
Yeah, well, you know, you're allowed to take a vacation. We'll just plan to do that without you, and, you know, if you're
Yep.
able to zoom in, we can do that. Okay, so let's do, Doug, does November 1st at 6 work for you for that workshop?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so let's do that.
What would the topic be again?
Primarily the open space
I think I missed
subdivision changes, but if something else arises, I know we have a lot of things we've identified tonight, if we get something done. I have to go back through my emails to see what else is out there. Okay, and then the Thanksgiving holiday, would folks be open to doing another workshop the last week of November?
Yep,
It would be the week of the 26th.
Yes, so it's week of the 27th. I'm just gonna look back on our timeline with Don Garish. I think we weren't gonna meet with him again after October 24th until December, but I just wanna, where did I have that? There it is. Right, okay, yeah, we were gonna have an executive committee meeting with him on December 5th, so that last week in November should be okay from his perspective anyway. Do Tuesdays work best for people?
28th?
I actually can't make it that night. I have
Okay.
another commitment, but
What
I could
about-
do Monday or Wednesday.
I could do, Wednesday would be better for me.
Yeah, It's fine with me.
29th?
The 29th, okay. Let's
6
do,
o'clock?
let's do 6 again, yeah.
Appreciate that.
And, topic to be determined, but we have lots to do, so I'm sure we'll come up with something.
I just want to circle back to our discussion earlier about the cannabis ordinance and
Yeah.
how we go about establishing that committee. Is council, do we want to appoint somebody to be liaison to that?
Yeah, that's a good point. I would, well, I don't know. Does anyone have an interest in serving on that? All of you are very busy, so. I can take the lead on that if folks would like.
You sure?
Yep, I think so.
Because I feel like I'm kind of,
Oh, if you'd like to do it, I'm.
no, I
Okay.
mean, I wouldn't like to do it, but I feel, especially after tonight, I feel like I'm not pulling my weight, so.
No.
I'd be willing to do it.
No, I can do it. You've
Okay.
got a lot of committee assignments I don't have, so, I can do that. I don't know, how have we established, Anne, you said that we've had what was the committee
food
that?
ordinance.
It was food sovereignty.
Food sovereignty, yeah, how did we establish the committee?
There was I think in that case, Rachel Lynn Rumson was sort of driving it, and
Yeah.
so we just worked together to set up, she recruited some members and,
wasn't anything the council created, it was a group of people that got
Right.
together and then
Oh,
approached
okay.
the council. But
Right.
to Doug's,
We had a ladder truck committee.
the ladder
that-
truck
that-
committee,
Yeah.
I was the council's liaison for the ladder truck committee. Basically, what we did is we put an announcement out that anyone that, we have to define the work of the committee.
Oh, right,
And once you define the work of the committee, then we can put out a notice for anybody who would be interested in apply. I think we need to decide how many people we want on the committee, because you don't want 36.
yeah.
no,
And then you have to have a mechanism for deciding who you're going to appoint.
how many people were on the ladder committee?
I think there were 7 altogether, but I would have to actually go back and look to see.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to, we ought to find out. We don't want to create, a committee with a number of people that they're going to have a hard time making a quorum, depending on how many people are interested in it. I don't know.
Well, it's important for us to determine, to define the role of the committee. So in other
Yeah.
words, it's ad hoc advisory committee.
Would we have like a council resolution or something that creates the ad hoc advisory committee, or is that too formal for an ad hoc committee? I don't know.
To be honest with you, I can't remember. It was, sorry, 7 years ago.
Yeah,
It's one of the first
I've
things I
never
did
done
on
an
council.
ad hoc committee, so I don't know what the process is typically.
Yeah, I think it was an ad hoc committee, we did
Yep.
exactly that for fire truck, and the example that I think is textbook, it goes back to the roads, was like
Yeah, that
a
goes
street ordinance, construction.
20 years ago.
That was the winter of 2010, 2011, and I sat in on all those. And
Okay.
if I may, I would strongly recommend that there be maybe even a public hearing. Just as we recently experienced with self-storage, there can be an inordinate amount of time burned up by drafting language, legal review, first reading that gets tabled. And again, drafting the standards is not difficult, getting consensus, but I think
But that would come after the committee's work, right? Or would you,
Well,
would
I'm
you
advoc-
suggest it at the beginning, before the committee is established?
I'm advocating that the committee be formed, the committee come up with what they recommend. It gets run by the council, and then the council, or maybe there's a public workshop or something. But my point is that it's going to be easy to come up with what the wish list is, and it's relatively easy to solicit input from the council. But I'm trying to avoid what happened with the self-storage for something that's potentially this complex.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
I don't, I think it's a good goal, but when you have a controversial issue, I don't think you can. I think that there needs to be public input, absolutely. I think defining the role of the committee is the important part. And I think there should be public input, absolutely. But I don't think there's a process that can eliminate the conflict. I mean, I'm just, you know.
I guess I,
Yeah, well, obviously, yeah, absolutely try.
in regards to forming the committee, Doug, could I work with you or Kristen on kind of formulating the definition of work, and then we can bring in the number of appointees, and then we could bring it back to the council to review?
Happy to help with that. I'm
Okay.
trying to be very clear about this. There could be a huge amount of planning time involved with coming up with this consensus. I'm really trying to, if you want this other work done, then I'm advocating that there should be consensus, including public input, before ordinance language is drafted.
Right, I'm not ruling out the public hearing, I hear what you're saying. And I think the idea of moving forward with a committee to do the bulk of the information gathering, so that you can then draft an ordinance that aligns with the goals that they establish, I think, I'm hoping that won't be too time intensive, at least for staff, and I know that maybe is not a realistic statement. But I think the council would like to move forward with addressing this, given the feedback we've been receiving. So I recognize there's so much going on, so I would like to assist with this as much as possible, but, I don't know, I just would like some inputs on defining the work. Maybe several counselors can sit down and do that?
Just work with the council to figure out the charge, yeah. and then
Okay.
That sounds like a good starting
I mean,
point.
I think one of the reasons I'm against it is because I can't see a mechanism or a process that isn't going to turn this into a conversation and a workload similar to the self-storage unit issue. So, I mean, I'm happy to try and help out and to avoid that, but that's the reason why I didn't support moving this forward, because I just don't see a way around that.
Okay. Matthew and Ann, you were the ones who agreed with moving this forward. Do either of you want to sit down with me to
Sure.
hash this out?
Yeah,
Okay.
happy to help.
That would be a public meeting.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I think, yeah, that's true, yeah. Well, you guys can just do each one.
Okay,
Listen
maybe,
to them
yeah,
here, too.
maybe Matthew and I do.
Yeah.
If you want us- Okay, let's just do that, and then we'll bring it back to, council as part of a workshop.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Thank you, sorry to
Okay, yeah,
derail the end of the meeting.
no, it was good to bring that up again. Okay, anything else before we adjourn? No? Itching? No, okay.
You need a
So I'm
motion?
looking for a motion to adjourn at,
So moved.
8:40 PM, right on the nose.
Second.
Well done.
Okay, Ann,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Marty,
Yes.
Matthew,
Yes.
so yes. Okay. Good night, everyone.